When the Holy One, blessed be He, gave the command to create the lights of the heavens, He said that their purpose would be for signs and appointed times for days and years. This is understood. Day and night depend on the sun, the rotation of the earth, the moon, and years. There is also a cycle of the moon and a cycle of the sun, which is a year. But what does for signs and appointed times mean? Appointed times. When is Yom Kippur? When is Sukkot? Passover. There are dates. The 10th of Tishrei is Yom Kippur, and the night of the 15th of Tishrei is Sukkot. But how do we determine this 15th? When does it start? The 10th. When does it start from the beginning of the month? What determines the start of the month? It is determined by the molad of the moon. As is known naturally, at the beginning of the month, the moon appears as a thin crescent, and over time it grows. In the middle of the month, the moon appears full, and then it shrinks, becoming smaller until at the end of the month, it completely disappears, and then it reappears. This is called the molad of the moon. The beginning of the month, when the Holy Temple existed, and during the time of the Sanhedrin, there was a court in Jerusalem that would declare the molad of the moon. Witnesses who saw the moon would come to Jerusalem and testify before the court. Many saw it in the summer, but in winter, only in certain places was it visible, and in other places, it was not. It was permitted to desecrate the Sabbath for the witnesses to come to Jerusalem and testify before the court. When they declared the molad, the month was sanctified. At night, based on the molad, the counting begins. The molad of the moon has significant halachic consequences. Jews are not allowed to eat hametz on Passover or eat on Yom Kippur. Everything is determined by the molad of the moon. The Gemara in Tractate Rosh Hashanah, page 5, tells a story about Rabban Gamliel, which at first glance seems very strange. Once, the sky was covered with clouds, and a white shape appeared on the 29th of the month. The people thought it was Rosh Chodesh. Rabban Gamliel, who was a leading authority in the Sanhedrin, said, "I received this from the house of my father," meaning from previous generations, who received it from generations before Moses, that the new moon is never less than 29 days, 12 hours, 40 minutes, and 73 parts of a second. What are 73 parts? Here, he refers to seconds. The hour in original Jewish tradition is divided into 1080 parts. So he is talking about 29 days, 12 hours, 40 minutes, and 73 parts, a precision of fractions of a second. And now we are on the 29th, but not yet 12 hours have passed from the start, he says. It cannot be the new moon. Everyone stares at him in amazement. Everyone sees the moon and wants to sanctify the month. He tells them, no, this is not the moon, because according to the average, we know the boundaries, and this is beyond the limit. It cannot be that the moon would appear this way. He was a leading authority in Israel and head of the court, and everyone followed his ruling. When this is calculated numerically, it comes out to 29.5309. NASA today has measuring tools and sophisticated instruments, and they also checked when the average of the moon occurs. They see that the difference between this and what NASA found is a difference of fractions of seconds between what Rabban Gamliel said 2,000 years ago and what NASA finds today. In other words, if we ask NASA today, they would say that on the 29th, at the beginning of the 29th day, the moon would not be visible. They would say it was not visible. But all of Israel saw a silhouette in the clouds, some reflection of sorts. But the moon itself was not seen. Indeed, the sages say about the verse, "For she is wise, and her understanding is in the eyes of the nations," that all the nations were amazed and said, "Only a wise and discerning people, this great nation." The sages explain that this refers to the astronomical calculations in the Torah, and when the nations of the world study these matters in their research, they will say, how much wisdom is in Israel that they received all these details and data from the Creator,